You know what today's topic is, boys?
Coaching.
Coaching. The way I framed it in the fertilizer said, dude, I don't need a coach. I'm going to start with just a little bit of a story of my experience with coaching, of being coached. As you guys know, and other people will know, I took a position after 9 years. I hadn't been on staff anywhere. And I took a position as a worship pastor, director of worship ministries, or I can't remember what it was called. Anyway, it doesn't matter. And it was challenging. And one of the biggest reasons that I survived that season, which, you know, any of you guys, you probably all said, dude, you were just not yourself during that time. Like, you were not, your energy wasn't there. It was not the same. And one of the biggest reasons that I survived that and actually ended up thriving in that was because I had a coach. You know, I hired a guy named Jeremy from John Nichols' group, worship team coach, I think it was, and he saved my butt. I mean, he was the guy that I could both like vent to and process with. And then he would have this really generous way of empathizing with me, and then helping me to not stay stuck in that spot. You know, there were a few moments where he would say something or ask a question that I was like, oh man, I haven't thought about it that way. That's really true. That's what's going on. Or after talking with him and being stuck on something for a while, I'd be like, oh, well, this is the obvious thing. Why did I not see that? And it's like, you know, because he's not me, because I'm not him, you know, and he had that outside perspective. But I remember, I can remember sitting in my vehicle. I was on the phone with him, and I pulled into my driveway, and I was just having this conversation with him, and like, great guy, but like what that did for me was it allowed me to thrive in a place that me as the coach, you know, and part of why I'm telling this story is because there's a myth that says that, you know, once you're an expert, you don't need coaching. And that's a completely different thought process than what we have. So anyway, I just want to start with my own stories that for those 3 years I had, and it was actually, I think I didn't hire him until like I was a year in or so. And I should have hired him from the day one. If only I would have hired him from day one, that would have been so good. But let's watch this short clip, and I'm going to share my screen, and then I'm going to watch this little video. Nothing else will do. I just want you. All right, ready? And go.
How do professionals get better at what they do? How do they get great? And there are two views about this. One is the traditional view. That is that you go to school, you study, you practice, you learn, you graduate, and then you go out into the world and you make your way on your own. That's how doctors learn. That's how lawyers do, scientists. Now the contrasting view comes out of sports. And they say, you are never done. Everybody needs a coach. The greatest in the world needs a coach. So I tried to think about this as a surgeon. Pay someone to come into my operating room, observe me, and critique me. It seems absurd. Expertise means not needing to be coached. So then which view is right? Turns out there are numerous problems in making it on your own. You don't recognize the issues that are standing in your way, or if you do, you don't necessarily know how to fix them. And the result is that somewhere along the way, you stop improving. And I thought about that, and I realized that was exactly what had happened to me as a surgeon. So I asked a former professor of mine who had retired, his name is Bob Osteen, and he agreed to come to my operating room and observe me. The case I remember that first case. It went beautifully. I didn't think there would be anything much he'd have to say when we were done. Instead, he had a whole page of dense with notes. Just small things, he said. Did you notice that the light had swung out of the wound during the case? Another thing I noticed, he said, your elbow goes up in the air every once in a while. That means you're not in full control. It was a whole nother level of awareness. He was describing what great coaches do. And what they do is they are your external eyes and ears, providing a more accurate picture of your reality. They're recognizing the fundamentals. They're breaking your actions down and then helping you build them back up again. After 2 months of coaching, I felt myself getting better again. And after a year, I saw my complications drop down even further. It was painful. I didn't like being observed. And at times I didn't want to have to work on things. I also felt there were periods where I would get worse before I got better. But it made me realize that the coaches were onto something profoundly important. I think it's not just how good you are now, I think it's how good you're gonna be that really matters.
Right off the bat, that I think a lot of worship leaders and teams are pretty quick to brush that idea off that he was sharing, because they're not professionals. This isn't it might be their part of their day job, or it might be their entire day job, but like in a lot of ways, it's like, dude, you're too serious. Like, stop being so serious with this. Like, we're not professionals, you know? And the idea of hiring somebody, paying somebody to come and help them be better is ridiculous. You want to talk to that for a second? Or do you feel like that's out there? That's true? That people are feeling that way? And maybe even almost like you're cheapening what we do because you're making us out to be professionals.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, because I'm trying to develop a level of empathy with a person that would think that, but I can't relate because I don't think that way.
Yeah.
Because maybe it's just wired in my makeup, but if I'm going to do something, I want to do it well. So even when I was really into athletic sports as a kid, you know, I was always thinking, boy, how can I get better at this? How can I, shoot more accurate free throws? How can I do a better layup? How can I, serve a tennis ball better? So I was constantly thinking of, man, what could I do to get better at this? And when I got into music, it's the same thing, and tech and recording and doing live sound. How can I do better? How can I get better? So that's just a mode of thinking. So for me, it's like, I'm just looking around for what can help me get to the next level. And if that's a coach, that's amazing. Like, wait a minute, you would hang out and talk to me about something that I love, and we could hang out and you could give me tips on how to do what I'm doing better. Yeah, man, where do I sign up for that? So to me, it's a no-brainer, but I know that there are people out there that are like, it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
Part of the issue is sometimes a person who is available to coach not at the level of the person that needs to be coached. In other words, if somebody said, hey, James, I can coach you with guitar playing, and you look at the guy and say, I can play circles around this guy, so how can this guy help me? I think people need to recognize that coaches don't have to be better than the coachee, if that makes any sense. Tiger Woods has a coach, but that guy can't beat Tiger Woods at golf, and the same thing goes for us as musicians or worship leaders. We don't have to be better than the guy we're coaching. And I think that's a commonly held view of somebody who is maybe even thinking about getting coached. They're like, how do I find somebody better than me to coach me? They might not say that out loud, but I think that's what they might be thinking.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah. And it might be that, and it might be the other side of things where it's like, well, this guy's like, he's a professional. I'm just a volunteer. Like, I just do this like because I like it. He's at a whole different level, and where's the relatability going to be, in that? You're about to say something, James?
No, I think the apprehension of coaching, at least what I've noticed, to try to work around kind of those situations where it's very tense, is the idea that you have to address what getting better actually means. Because getting better is not, it's vague, but I think it should be vague, because when you talk about the surgeon sharing his story, like, he's getting better as complications after surgery were going down, like, is the example he uses. And I don't know that when you tell somebody who's maybe a volunteer or even like Kevin is saying is very good, like the idea of what do you mean getting better? Like, does it mean I play the song better? Does it mean so the idea of, so I think establishing a realm of potential inside, and how like, hey, we always know we can be growing as ourselves. And I think that that's more my approach to coaching, and why I find it, like, how I try to emphasize it when I work with people is, you may never want to do or ever be able to do certain things, but whatever you can do, you can always improve on how you're doing that. And so it's kind of, coaching is helping establish like a mindfulness. It's helping establish, it's like taking that person who may or may not be better than you, like the Tiger Woods example, but giving you a viewpoint of what it feels like to watch yourself. It's like, oh, okay, so I'm not doing all of the things I think I'm doing because I take them for granted. It's that peanut butter and jelly example that we always do, or that I always make you guys do. But that, if you don't write it all down, you don't necessarily know what you're leaving out. And I think that for people, the idea of getting better oftentimes has a hard, tangible thing to it. Like, oh, I'll get better when I can play the solo like Lincoln Brewster does. Like, I mean, yeah, that would be getting better, but that doesn't mean that's the path you need to be on. Like, that's not your end game. Like, okay, I can play the solo now. So when it comes to worship, I think Tony hits the nail on the head. Like, is it that important? Is their perspective, like, it should be important. It should be important that what we're doing connects with the people that are here and ministers to, whether it's the team that's under your leadership or whether it's the way the service and worship connects to the church. So I think framing coaching with what we do in that regard is, how much more is it important that we're always doing something to connect, always doing something more to include and engage people who are participating in what we're doing, and reaching people that are already here, but maybe are just, being left out of the loop unintentionally. Like, it's not anything we're doing on purpose. We just don't realize it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, maybe that would be a fun and interesting place to go next. And that is kind of when we start working with a leader, a tech, a team, a worship pastor. What's that process like when we start, because I think, sometimes worship leaders come to us and they're asking us for help, and they're taking it out of their training budget and they're doing this instead of going to a conference or whatever. And sometimes it's the pastor that said, hey, can you help my worship leader? Like, he's great, she's great, but there's a couple of things that I'm trying to help them move forward, and I don't have those skills. Can you come and teach them those, those pieces? So sometimes it's they want it, sometimes they don't. But either way, we're in this relationship and we have some time, like Tony was saying. Great, we get to sit down and talk about things that we love. This is awesome, and help you. I think one of the reasons that I've changed a lot of my verbiage, instead of from getting better, because that means that right now you're worse. Or something, or I might not want to get better. I don't want to care. But what most people do care about is, I want to feel more comfortable. I want to feel more confident. I want to feel like I am effective in what I'm doing. So those are things that I can, like, oh man, I hate feeling nervous. I hate feeling like I don't know what I'm doing. I hate that feeling of like, I just never feel like I've really got this. I'm always questioning myself. I'm like, no, you don't need to do that. So anyway, when we start, kind of what are some of your go-tos? I know, Tony, when you walk into a group of worship or a group of techs, I've heard you say things like, hey, look, I would feel weird if some guy came in here and told me what to do in my space, right? Like you're great at breaking down, you know, those barriers, and forming some common ground, or clearing off the common ground, because there is common ground. So what are some of your go-tos as you start?
Well, one of the things that I always start with is, saying, I'm not here to fix you. I'm not here because everything's a mess and you need me to sort it out. I look at it like, the church gave us a credit card and we're going to Home Depot and we're all buying tools. Like, who wouldn't want to go shopping for more tools to do their job better? So that's the way I look at it. Like, I'm not here because everything's a mess and I'm coming in as the great savior to save you. That's not what this is about. Like, let's all go shopping and get some tools to help us do our job better.
That's cool. What comes to your mind, Jim?
Well, starting out with somebody, I like to figure out why, like speaking with them about where they feel they are. I think one of the most important things we've been able to emphasize over the years is that idea of what you see is to some degree the reality, even if it turns out down the road that that's not what was going on. It's helping somebody evaluate, where do you feel like you are and where do you want to be? Like, what are the things that you wish, even if they're just the idea, like you said, about not being so nervous, something, even if it's abstract, like what are some of the things that you feel shouldn't, they're bumps in the road that you shouldn't go through, and then kind of identifying things. Sometimes it is hands-on, as Tony's saying, as like finding like, okay, here's some tools, like here's some steps, but a lot of that stuff I think is the initial part. I think maybe if you break down like a coaching relationship, I think the beginning is very heavy on, here's some things you can do, some hands-on things that will turn out, to make you feel more comfortable, in a moment, whether that's how to, writing down what you want to do with a song before you get into rehearsal so that you have an idea. It doesn't mean you have to follow it, but the idea is like, okay, when I planned the music, I wrote down like the dynamics of the song on my page so that when I talk to the team later tonight, I already know what I want to say. And I don't feel as like, what do I want to do here? I have a plan. And I find that almost every single thing we encounter is helping people be more intentional. That's really, to me, what coaching has been, is helping people be aware and then make decisions to be more intentional about what they want. It's not necessarily helping them decide what they want. That's, different from every scenario. That's the Tiger Woods example. It depending on what club you're using, we have to hold, depends on where we're aiming. We got to hit differently or go. But the idea remains the same, as like, whatever we do choose, here's how we can use it. Like, here's how we can aim for that and be more direct in our approach.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I'm always thinking about, okay, I'm always looking for gaps. And my approach is pretty wide open. Like, tell me about the worship ministry. I just want the worship leader to start talking, because then I'm listening for things. I'm listening for ways of thinking. I'm listening for the excuses that they're giving, the places where they're frustrated. And as I get to know what the church is like and what the team is like, I start looking for the gaps between what would it look like if it was healthy and what would it look like, from where it is now. Is there a gap there? Or is it like, no, man, it's like, I'll hear something about the way they eat meals before rehearsals sometimes, right? And I'm like, wow, let me affirm those things that feel like they're like right on. Like, a healthy team does that, so good job on doing that or whatever. Or if they're just telling me, okay, so and 7 o'clock rolls around and people start getting there, and I feel terrible, but I'm usually like running around making copies of the songs. I'm like, this down, like, oh, you're not prepared at all. And what that causes is for your team to feel like they're not prepared. So, how did you learn to do that? What could be a better way of doing that? What goal do you want to set for yourself to change that? Silly example, but I'm looking for the gaps. I'm listening. I'm asking questions. I'm asking why, you do things, because like Jim was saying, it's about intentionality, and you can't be intentional unless you know why you're doing it. So a lot of times I think worship leaders and, other people in the worship ministry don't think about it. Okay. Now my family is listening to a Spotify song that they just started playing on their computer,
That is
not
awesome.
computer.
I love it.
And we got a show for you.
Stop changing. I'm just going to listen.
That happened to me when I was tuning a system at a church, and I'm running off a Spotify list or whatever, and then my daughter started playing stuff at home. I'm like, what is going on here? That's so funny. I love it. Technology is cool.
Yeah.
I know you were veggie-tailed off your train of thought. But I did have something I wanted to chime in with, if it's all right.
Go ahead.
I think there's a funny quote. Kanye West was quoted as saying his biggest disappointment in life is he'll never be able to see himself perform live. And as silly or as haha, it's fun to laugh about something like that, but I think there's validity to that as far as the approach of what we're doing is you'll never, no matter recorded, but you never know what it feels like to be under your own leadership.
Right.
So like when I work with a worship leader and I'm like, you know what, hey, you don't have a lot of musicians, like schedule me to play with you guys. Because I'd love to tell you what it feels like to sit, how it feels to be fed information from you. I'm going to come see you guys lead a service because I'm going to sit in the congregation and be a member of what's going on and be like, okay, this is how this comes. I know what she's thinking or he's thinking because I work with them. But if I didn't, how would that make me feel? Or what would, do I see those things? And so for all the best, the best intentions of people trying to help us, like having someone dedicated to sit in the places that you can't be in two places at once.
Right.
So, being able to sit in the congregation and be under worship in that experience and be able to take notes or take observations or even observe how other people are doing, how they're receiving things, to be on the team, to hear how they communicate what they need from you and, what kind of assumptions they make based on certain things. And so I think it's very interesting to pair it with that quote and think, what is it really like to see me do this? Not from I'd love to see it because I'd love to see it, but what am I missing because I don't see it happening?
Yeah. I mean, I think I want to highlight something because I feel like that option is a uniqueness to what we do and how we do it, how we do our coaching. Like, Emma, that's enough. You would come and play on my team as a way of coaching and observing and helping me grow. Like, you would play with us, yeah, like we come and play together. Tony, you've gone and mixed services before as a way of what is this like in the real world? What is the band really putting out? And that's that speaks to our approach. Our approach is we say walk alongside. We don't say we have this great spin class video you can watch or buy. No, like we're in there with you. Let's get our hands dirty together. Like let's do this stuff. Whether it's as simple as just sitting in the congregation, or whether it's sitting in with the team. I think it's a real uniqueness of how our particular kind of coaching gets played out.
Yeah, agreed. Definitely with the audio side of stuff.
Yeah, I think something that is vastly overlooked, and I've noticed on some more recent projects that we've done how much it's appreciated. I think it's nice to have a place where you have someone who understands. And that's sometimes a hard thing to, like, when someone's resistant to coaching, like to break into. But usually when you get past that, it's a very, just the vulnerability goes through the roof, and the comfort, like the acknowledgement of why this is so necessary comes out, because people like to have a place where they can be like, I can't believe my pastor asked me to do this with 20 seconds ready before the service started. And then I can go, yeah, that's terrible. That's not okay. Like we should, let's, instead of just like, I have to bear the burden of this. And when I took on a staff position, one of our coaches stayed on to coach me afterwards. So I was getting monthly coaching, and I would do the same thing. We'd go out and get pizza after the services, and I would tell him, I'd be like, I can't believe this. I can't believe what they're like, X, Y, and Z. And I loved being at the church. It was not. And so putting yourself in those shoes, like, I like to tell people when I'm working with them, like, if you need to like vent or talk about something or want to know if certain things are like healthy or unhealthy, like, it's okay to ask that, because I don't go to this church. I'm not, you know, the son of somebody who's on the board or so, you know, like, I have no connection. So whatever, you know, no skin in the game, as you guys always say. But like, so whatever you need to talk about, like, we can just objectively look at it. Does this sound like a healthy scenario? Like, if it isn't, maybe we should talk to some people. And like, you know, I feel like you get that support and that advocacy for like, you know, not only does the coach want you to improve and have your potential grow, but they want to make sure that like you're in a healthy environment, that like what's being asked of you is realistic, you know, for certain things. And sometimes when you're on your own, it's hard to not get steamrolled because you don't know, and you just have so much come on to you. And depending on the culture of the church, the worship leader may be a lot of different things, you know, and then they find out that other worship leaders don't have to do all that. And it's confusing, you know, they're like, I didn't know. I always thought I had to do that and run the kids ministry. Like, you know, like, no, I mean, maybe here, but you know, let's talk about that. Let's talk to your pastor about why that might be a burden, like keeping you from doing what you should be doing.
Yeah.
Focusing where you should be focusing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. And, you know, the other thing connected with that is most of the time, you know, people's misgivings are in regards to a misconception of what they think coaching is or will be.
Yeah.
You know, and some people are already feeling overwhelmed in the task, you know, so they're like, so you just hired somebody to tell me I'm no good at the thing that I'm struggling to, and realizing I'm drowning, right?
Yeah.
Like, thanks a lot. This is just what I needed, you know, and that's not what the goal is at all. And
Yeah.
I think that's a thing too, that, you know, people think that we're just going to come in and critique them. That's the first thing. The second thing is there are a subset of people out there that are not interested in being somebody's cookie cutter version of worship music, right? So if you say, oh, well, we want our worship to be more like Bethel, or we want it to be more like Hillsong, some people don't want to do that. So they're like, why are you hiring somebody to make us something that we're not? Which is, again, something that we don't do. We're not trying to make you into somebody. You know, Jim always says this, we always say this, we're trying to make you into a better version of yourself so that you can be more effective in your community. It's not about being something else. So I've been in scenarios where churches, before I even started one step of coaching, I had to go in and convince them that I could even come talk to them. You know, they were just like, I don't know about this guy, and why do we need this? And it wasn't offensive to me at all, because I got where they were coming from. And I can honestly say, in, I don't know, over 6 years of coaching, I've never went into or left a coaching situation where the majority of the team wasn't like, that was a lot of fun. I didn't even know that it was going to be that fun. Like, you know, I learned stuff that I didn't even know. You know, I've never had somebody come to me and say, that was the biggest waste of time and money that my church has ever done. Like, that was so annoying. It's just never happened. Now, maybe people are being polite and they don't tell me that, but overwhelmingly, they're surprised at how much they enjoyed doing the thing that they enjoy doing, you know? So it's like the misconceptions, like, don't let that take you out of the game of, you know, feeling the benefit of like, wow, I just learned a bunch of stuff that I didn't think about and saw things in a new light. And I actually feel more prepared now and not as afraid. And I think I'm having more fun now, you know, like that's where we want to go.
Yeah. I think that comes through because of why we do what we do. You know, none of us are like, well, you know, we've learned a lot, and so we really need to, like, you know, give back, help the little guys out, you know, or well, I'm an expert, and so I should be teaching other people how to do what I do because I'm an expert. You know,
Right.
like that. What? No, like, okay, have we invested in our own craft? Have we worked hard to better ourselves and to, you know, to learn? Absolutely, we all have, and we just care about people, and we know what it's like. For me, I started this thing because I knew what it was like to not have anybody. You
Right.
know,
Exactly.
try to be hacking it out week after week on my own, and I'm like, oh, if there was just somebody who I could learn from and who could help support me. Like, that's what that's our motivation.
Yeah. One of my first, I'll never forget it. You know, when I was, I don't know, 18, 19, 20-ish, starting to do sound for the first time and not having a clue other than I like music and I can carry stuff. So I'm a good roadie, you know? I ran into a guy, a local legend, you can say, guy, his name is Rick Coberly, and he was a Claire Brothers, ex-Claire Brothers guy. I mean, he toured with Michael Jackson. He was on stage for the US Festival or the Live Aid or whatever in Philly. You know, I mean, this guy's an absolute legend. And he came to this, you know, I was working with this country bar band, and he came to the bar and they were like, oh, this is Rick Cook. And I was like, I don't know anything about this. What should I do? You know? And the thing he told me, I'll never forget it because I still practice it now. He just said, well, you know, country music, it's all about the story. So you got to make sure that you hear the vocals. Vocals have got to be up front. And, you know, the guitar, I think I asked him, what should I do about the guitar? He said, treat the guitar like a shaker, like a rhythm instrument. It needs to be stringy and high end, but not real boomy, so it doesn't conflict with other things. And it was like 2 tidbits of information that completely revolutionized my world and made me think, like, wow, you can be purposeful. You know, you can actually do things that help people get the music, and it set the stage. But I, you know, I didn't have anybody, you know, nobody did sound, nobody talked, I didn't know anybody. So I never forgot that. And from that point on, I'm like, I want to surround myself with people who are learning and growing and who I can learn from, no matter where I'm at.
Yeah.
You know, and I still learn stuff, you know, even in going out. Yeah, I was at a church last night working on a project helping them convert electronic drums to acoustic drums, and just in talking with their tech staff and how he approached EQing in that room, I learned something. You know, like, oh, that's interesting. So you're this is my approach and this is your approach, and that works too. Like, I'm going to try that and see how that goes. I'm still learning, you know, because you can never know it all. You just can't, you know.
Wow. And that's, I think, you know, being lifelong learners is the phrase that I would use normally for what you're describing. You know, we just love learning. We just, you know, we don't want to stop. And I feel like the reason, you know, when somebody gets coached by us, they feel that passion, they feel that culture, that internal culture that we have, that we love what we do so much, that we care about it, that we're always trying to understand it in different ways and learn and grow. and like that sparks something in them. It reignites something in them. I mean, because if you would have asked me in that night, how do I mix country music? I said, well, take that dial and you just turn it to 0 and you're good. I'm just kidding.
You're not kidding. That's the problem.
No, I can appreciate
tell you to play his Spotify playlist instead, which is VeggieTales music.
Well, do I need to, go in and educate everybody that rock and roll is country music? Like Elvis, the king of rock and roll, was a country, boy from Memphis, and Carl Perkins, Jerry Lee Lewis. Anyhow.
Yeah. Well,
So all you rock guys that are like, country's lame, there is a lot of lame country out there, but you can't say country music in general is lame.
Yeah.
Anyhow.
Yeah. Well, I just got exposed to a whole new set of music talking about Spotify. Like you had the list of people on the side that are like what they're listening to. And every once in a while, if I'm like bored, I want some inspiration. I'm like, what are they? Oh, yeah, let me listen to that. And I did that. Actually, Jim, you're like, what's going to happen? But no, I was like, I spent the whole afternoon. My buddy Dustin Satter, who lives in Franklin, is. I'm wondering if that's the playlist that he has at his coffee shop, the Highbrow Coffee and Tea. Shout out. And but I learned all these different artists like Cody Fry and Colony House. Some people I'd never heard of. I was like, I really like the feel of this music. And anyway, sorry.
Nice.
Rabbit trail. Different than vegetarian.
Sorry. Now I have a coffee shop I have to visit.
Yeah. Highbrow Coffee and Tea. It's right on this little
Franklin,
lake.
right?
Yeah, in Franklin.
Yeah.
That was my thing when I was on tour. It was I would find any coffee shop I could and just sit in it for like an hour and just, I don't know, just take it in. The best two were in Madison, Wisconsin, and Colorado Springs, Colorado. Oh. They just had the best atmospheres. I don't know what it was about.
Starbucks?
No, only one. I'm just kidding. Neither of them were Starbucks. We don't have time for this right now.
Yeah, we don't.
One thing I did want to...
Don't even get me started.
Kind of key in on that Tony said that I think for me, I'd say 9 out of 10 people. So once you get past the do I want to be coached and that whole kind of thing, like I think once people you break the walls down, 9 out of 10 people genuinely have a reason they love being there. And they just maybe have lost it, or it's been buried by responsibility or buried by other things that, impede them from being able to do what they want to do. And when you can start to just rip that away and be like, I don't care. What is it that you love to play? And then you keep pulling away and you find it. Or what's your favorite song to sing? Or whatever it is. And then when that, we just focus on that, and it's like, I don't care about anything else. Find the love, find the joy, find that light, because you want to be here. That's why you're here. Every once in a while, there's the one guy or the one girl who's like, no, I just do this. And you go, all right, well then, good. You just do it, but over there. I'm going to work with the people who want to be here, because that's, that's huge. Yeah. It's so much of what we do, you start on a journey and then you lose sight of it.
Yeah.
I wanted to do this. I loved playing guitar on the worship team, or I loved, helping play drums on the worship team, or I loved leading this team, 5 years ago when I got into it, but it's become paperwork and scheduling and all of those things have to be done, but you just push it out of the way in the beginning, get back to why you want to be here, and help people have fun again, and help people have confidence, having fun with what they do. When we're celebrating, something like even as simple a song as oh, happy day, oh, happy day, what? You wash my sins away. It's those are nice words to put on a wall. That's a nice t-shirt for a Christian college. That's a good bumper sticker. No, it should feel like we're singing that from a genuine place. When I'm playing that guitar line, it should have so much joy in it that I'm we're singing about our sins being washed and being clean, and get rid of, you have to take time to peel away all the stuff that's gotten in the way, and then slow, not work it back in you know, but there is a reality. You have to make schedules or do certain things, but like find that part of like, I love doing this. I love playing. I love singing that. I love the way it feels when the band's playing, you know, or when you're mixing and it's like, man, I love when the team's together and playing and not just like, you know, and I can actually mix because they're doing something as opposed to just like them looking to me like, well, you fix it because, you know, we don't care. We're just kind of muted in color. Like there's no life in what we're doing. You can't mix something with no life in it, you know, because what the guy said to Tony was not, you know, look for this frequency range or do this. He explained it. It was abstract. You know, it should be twangy, it should be bright, and it should be prominent, but it's rhythmic, and don't let the lower weight of the sound get in the way. You know, make sure they're telling a story. You know, make sure that the story is so like those aren't concrete, they're not measurable, they're not quantifiable things. Like, you know, hey, at 6,000, cut it off, or whatever, you know, like. So I think it's important to like help people get back to the fact, like, don't you love doing this? Like, don't you love celebrating like he's alive this morning, yesterday, today, and tomorrow? Like, you know, where is that? Where's that in what you're singing? Or is everything 80 BPM and the same dynamic and I'm going to hit my head against the pew because I passed out because I couldn't do it?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've got a perfect
Tony.
story about that too. I was doing a training a couple weeks ago, and through the training, I had one of the sound techs was through the whole time. He was just like, listen, I'm sorry. I'm really dumb. I don't get this. Could you say that again? You know, and he was constantly kind of demeaning himself, you know? And at one point we were doing some stuff and we had just talked about EQing and what we could do. And I had made an adjustment on an acoustic guitar, actually. And all of a sudden he perked up and he said, wait, what did you do? I'm like, well, here's what I did. He's like, I heard that. I actually heard that. That was amazing. And he got super excited and was like, I can't believe that I actually heard it. Because he thought that it was way over his head. Like, this guy does stuff, I don't know what he does, and I can't do this, and I'll never be what they want me to be here, but whatever, I got to be here. And he just completely turned around and was like, I can't believe I heard that. I can't wait till next week, man. I'm going to try that. I can't wait to try these things. And it was like, dude, yes, like, yeah, you got it, man. You're on the path now. Like, you can do stuff, you can get better, and it's stinking fun, man. Mm-hmm. It's actually fun. And so I love that, like, example of like, let's get people back to having fun and not being terrified.
Yeah.
The worst sound technicians I've worked with in churches, and trust me, I've spent years of my life with some of the worst sound techs. And the main problem was fear. Like, they were afraid of getting out of their league and getting into something that they didn't know, or something changing that they couldn't fix. And so instead of learning and growing, they put a ceiling. No, I'm not doing that. I'm not trying that. I'm not going to do that. You must do it this way. And it just was soul sucking for everybody. And so fear, like, stop being afraid and start having fun again.
That's good. That's good.
Well, in the vein of fear, the absolute best coaching experience I ever had was I got to work for a number of years in a row with a high school worship team, and they were just the epitome of the experience of coaching, because they were younger. So in their mind, there was that, I need to learn from this person. So there was no inhibition. There wasn't that, well, I know what I'm doing. I've been doing it this way for so many years. All of that was non-existent, because every moment I would come in there, they'd sit on the edge of their seats like, okay, what are we going to talk about today? What are we going to try for this? Or how's that going to work? And so it helped me understand how important it is to get to treat projects that way, and kind of filter that information through what I need to get it to read, you know, for people who aren't in that position of life, who don't feel that way, find out ways to communicate it so that you can get that level of inspiration and excitement like Tony was talking about. And the guy's like, I heard that. Like, I don't care if you play the drum fill right. Did you do something where you felt it connect, like, or the fill like it is on the CD, sorry. But did you do something that you felt like the band, like, I love when that happens. And I always tell the worship leaders, like, if somebody does something, point it out. Like, if something feels great in a moment, be like, hey, you know, can we do that again? Because that just felt awesome. Like, because that's that thing, like that hair on your arm standing up, and that those kids in high school who were just like, we don't know what to do. What should we do? How can we do this? And it was like taking, I don't know, it was just so exciting to see them and to help them build this idea of like, they want to do a bridge again. I'm like, all right, you want to do it a second time? And they're like, well, yeah, because that's how they did it at this conference I went to. And I was like, okay, that's fine. And it worked there, but like, why should we do it here? And they were like, we don't know. And I was like, we can do it. Just give me a good reason. And like, we'd have those, like, it was just like Play-Doh. Like, you could just create any scenario in the world, and they were like receptive to the idea of like, yeah, why should we do it again? Let's have maybe we'll add this, or maybe we'll do the first one quieter. Like, they had these, like, you know what I mean? And that's stuff that, like, I feel like people take so for granted now. It's like, when they do something now and they do it, and it's like, well, okay, we can, but give me a good reason. They're almost like too tired to go through the conversation. You know, it's like, all right, well, then we won't do it again. I'm like, no, that's not what I meant at all. I just want to know why. And they're like, well, tell me why. And I was like, no, I'm not going to tell you. It's because I'm not going to do it. It's not me, right? My favorite thing of coaching is to come into a service after we're done, stand in the back, hear the whole thing happen, and be wonderful, and see people doing what they couldn't do 6 or 7 months ago, or didn't feel comfortable doing 6 or 7 months ago. And then it's running itself. And you go, see, everybody showed up this morning. Everybody's stepping into who they are, and they're doing better. And they're doing more of what they're filling their role more confidently, more comfortably. And it just happens on its own. I hate when I have to carry something, not because I don't want to, or just because that's not what my job is. You know, I want to see other people doing it.
Yeah.
But I love that
Yeah.
acoustic guitar and hearing that, and that's great.
It was cool, man. It was so cool. It was like, yeah, I love it.
Where Tony and I are working somewhere, and the drummer there is, I mean, he's great, and like, but he's not like real, he's not like real trained, like self-taught and works and stuff. But like, when he, you know, we'll change a fill or change, but when he gets something, like when he gets the concept of what it is, like, he plays it great, and it's like the feel is there, and it just, the song explodes with that kind of passion and it's so fun to watch him get excited about it. You know, because it's just a couple of adjustments, like, oh, try this, or you know, don't worry about the fill in the CD. Like, this is what's important, and like, hit it, and just hearing him come to life just brings the whole room alive, and you can see everybody else respond to him like nailing it, and it's just like, it's that same kind of idea, like, oh, I can do that. It's approachable. It's graspable.
Yeah. Well, the cool thing about that drummer is he started playing drums at like 50, at the age of 50, because they needed somebody to serve.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool, you know, like, you could look at that and say, oh no, he's going to be a terrible drummer. No, he like taught himself to play drums to serve at 50, and he's excited every time he makes progress. That's like really cool.
Yeah.
You know, I love it.
I think some of, you probably want to go, I'm sorry, I could talk about this all day. So you picked a good topic. No, I think some of the idea of like what is so overwhelming for worship leaders is I can't explain that, or I can't get them to do what I need them to do. You know?
Good point.
And like having a coach sit with somebody and be like, you know what, hey, it's not about making it complicated. It's the opposite. Let's simplify it so that people can get the concept, they can nail it. And then so working with, like, we ask a lot of worship leaders without knowing we're asking that much of them. Like, take somebody who's like a good singer, you know, maybe a good guitar player, good piano player, like, to accompany themselves. And then all of a sudden they have to teach a drummer a part. They have no idea. Or they have to explain to a sound guy what they need. They have no idea. You know, and so, but the expectation is that they do, or more so, we didn't think if you knew, we just, you know, just figure it out, like, that's not easy stuff to do. It's not, so it's been you know, like years of journeying through this, but like working with worship leaders saying like, okay, let's look at what you want to hear in the drums. Let's sit down and listen to what you think should be there. Like, don't worry about the real person playing right now. Like what is important in the song to you? And it's like, they're like, oh, this is a lot of work. And I'm like, well, yeah, like it is, because him or her drumming is depending on you knowing what you want from them. So there's a huge gap in knowledge of being able to play your instrument and sing, and being able to lead a team of musicians of instruments that you don't even play.
Right.
And technology. I put technology in that category, because when the mic doesn't work, or when something doesn't work and they go, you know, they just turn to the worship leader and he's like, well, I don't know. We'll have to look it up, or we'll have to figure that, you know, like it's very stressful. So having a coach is like, to me, a no-brainer. Why would you not want to have somebody who's in your corner, who's like, who you can email and be like, so this exploded, you know, we plugged this in and it literally blew up on stage. What do we do? And I'd say, well, find the manufacturer's warranty, because it shouldn't do that. You know, but like calm somebody down, talk them through the problem. Like, let's work through this. Let's figure out how to make it better. Let's maybe teach you, like Tony said, let's teach you some tools to deal with these things when they happen again. So maybe something as simple as some ways to talk to a drummer that, you know, maybe they're not book smart. Like maybe it's not the total correct way to say it, but you get your point across and that person has enough information to go. Working at that same place with a girl who's playing guitar, electric guitar, and like, again, self-taught, working on some things here and there, but like she played the entire like melody and like lead line to this song when I was leading with them, because I broke it down into like a 2-fret thing. I was like, you can play the whole thing right here. And I don't fault the worship leader there, because she doesn't play guitar. Yeah. You know, there's no idea. So it's helping, you know, helping having, you know, part of being the quote unquote the experts is not that we're an expert and like better than everybody else, is that we have experience working with everything that you're going to have to deal with. You know, we've done it at so many different places over the years that I've seen this happen, or I know how to talk to somebody who doesn't know how to, you know, bridging the gaps. I just talked for 5 minutes to get to that point, I guess, is having a coach helps bridge the gaps in what you're missing. And you're not missing it because you're bad. You're not missing it because you're dumb or you're inexperienced. You're missing it because they hired you because you were great. You love to sing. You're a great worshiper. You can accompany yourself, and it's great. But you know, it's a much bigger job than that, or it's a much bigger responsibility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it's
well, we go ahead, Dave.
I was just gonna say that what Jim said that I like was you know, why would you not want to have somebody in your court? And it's kind of like, you know, when, if you've ever had a good friend who doesn't go to your church, but is really great at what he or she does, and they join your team for the weekend, it's like, man, that was fun. Like that's what it feels like to have a coach, you know, somebody on your team who really knows what they're doing, who's a fun person to be around, you know, usually, you know, joining the team. So what are you gonna say, Tony?
Well, I was going to say there's a couple different people that we work with that are afraid or wary of coaches, right? So the first scenario would be the person who is not a trained musician, but wanted to serve and has good leadership qualities and were available. And they said, can you lead the worship team? This person doesn't know a lot about music, doesn't listen to a lot of music, but they can sort of play, and they're learning how to play the piano or the guitar or whatever. That's pretty intimidating. Like, you know, these people are going to, you know, reveal all of my flaws. You know, I'm never going to get to the point of being Chris Tomlin, you know, like, so that person is afraid. Then there's another person that is the, you know, I got a degree, I'm in music education, and I've been a music teacher at the local high school for the last 15 years. And I know about music and music theory, but maybe I'm not as modern as everybody else, but I don't want people telling me how to do my thing that I've been doing for 15 years. You know, there's that type of person. And that's another kind of broken perspective, you know, that we're working to overcome. So not everybody is, and then there's the young, I just got out of, you know, college with a music degree and a worship leading degree, and I studied worship leading, and I know, like, what can a coach really give me? So, and we often work with all three of those and all points in between, you know? So there's different reservations and fears from all three of those different scenarios.
Yeah. Yeah. How do we want to land this plane? What?
You did it. You made a face, so I was waiting. Like, yes. Go ahead.
Well, I want to land the plane to put a bow on this conversation.
Well, I would steal from the guy from the video. Blatantly steal. Don't try to mask it as your own. Blatantly steal here. I would say the reality is if you're in a position, any one of which has been described at all today, you know, whether it was the examples that Tony just gave or anything else we talked about this morning, if you want to get better, if you love what you do and you value what you do and you value the impact that it has, then you would want to have, then you can easily be brought into a place where you realize that you need somebody, even if it's just to be able to vent. Even if your church system is rather healthy, the team, you have 30 people on your team that rotate in and out every month, and you have all this stuff, and you know, you're not looking to build a team. You have, you know, I think people think that it has to do with the situation. Like, well, I don't have enough people, so we get a coach to help us like work on building a team. Like, yeah, that's a possibility. But I think you're missing the point. The point of having a coach is having somebody there to be in your corner, to work with you, to help you understand and not lose sight of how important and valuable this position is and how much of an impact it can have or how much of an impact it can fail to have. You know, the absolute best athletes have coaches. You better believe that even if it's not like even if it's not like a coach, Chris Tomlin has somebody that's working with him while he's on tour. You know, not because of anything other than they need those kinds of things. Like when you're at the top of your game, you need people to keep an eye on keeping you at the top of your game. So if you're content with being in the middle of your game or less, then that's fine. You probably don't want a coach, because having a coach means you got to do work, like the guy said. You know, I got to look at this. I got to listen. I have to make an emotional choice to say no to improving when somebody points something out. It's bad enough to neglect something, but it's so much worse to have it brought to your attention and then still choose to neglect it, because that's now like a conscious decision.
Right.
I think when it comes to boiling this whole thing down, it seems to me it comes down to the fact that we as coaches are not there to critique, but to support. It's just that simple. We're not critiquers. We're not there to point out your flaws. We're there to support you and help you. So.